What if your life became a sermon without speaking a single word? Imagine a world where actions echo louder than any speech, where compassion outshines cleverness, and where humility transforms hearts more deeply than any argument. This was the radical path of Saint Francis of Assisi, a man who lived in a time of wealth, war, and pride, but chose poverty, peace, and humility. Through a life stripped of excess and filled with love, Francis changed not only his own world, but ours as well. Francis's story did not begin in sanctity. He was born Giovanni di Pietro di Bernardone, the son of a wealthy cloth merchant in the bustling town of Assisi, Italy. His early years were marked by privilege and pleasure. The young Francis had everything: fine clothes, lavish feasts, and friends who revelled in the joy of youth. He dreamed not of serving the poor, but of becoming a noble knight, winning glory in battle and admiration among his peers. Life was a stage, and Francis played his part with gusto, chasing every thrill and desire that wealth could offer. But the world has a way of breaking illusions. When war erupted between Assisi and the neighbouring city of Perugia, Francis seized his chance to chase fame, donning armour and riding out to battle. The dream, however, quickly soured. He was captured, imprisoned for a year in a cold, dark cell, and left to contemplate the emptiness of glory. When Francis was finally released, he returned home, but the spark of ambition had faded. Illness weakened his body, and doubts gnawed at his soul. In the silence of his suffering, Francis began to hear an unfamiliar voice, a call that would change everything. One day, while wandering near the edge of town, Francis entered the crumbling church of San Damiano. The walls were cracked, the altar neglected. He knelt before a simple crucifix, seeking comfort. In that moment, he heard the voice of Christ. "Francis, rebuild my church." At first, Francis took the words literally. He began collecting stones, labouring to restore the physical structure of San Damiano. But as he worked, he realised his true mission was far greater. The church needed renewal not of stone, but of spirit. It was not buildings that had to be rebuilt, but hearts. Francis's response was nothing short of radical. He renounced his inheritance, stripping away his fine garments in a dramatic public gesture. Clad in rough cloth, he embraced the life of a beggar, sharing food with lepers, comforting the sick, and serving the forgotten. He kissed the wounds of those everyone else avoided, seeing Christ in the faces of the poor and outcast. Francis's actions spoke volumes. He did not preach with words, but with his life. Crowds began to notice. Without seeking followers, Francis inspired them. Men and women left behind comfort and security to join him, forming the first Franciscan brotherhood. Their rule was simple: live the gospel, love all creation, and serve in humility. Francis's joy was infectious, his humility unshakable. He greeted everyone as a brother or sister, seeing the beauty of God in all living things. Even the animals seemed to respond to his kindness. Birds would gather as he spoke, filling the air with song. In the town of Gubbio, Francis famously tamed a fierce wolf by approaching it with gentleness instead of fear, turning a feared beast into a friend of the townspeople. Yet Francis never sought fame or recognition. He shunned honours and lived in poverty, often sleeping outdoors, relying on the generosity of others. His only mission was to mirror Christ, poor, humble, and filled with love. Through his simplicity, Francis became a living gospel. People didn't just hear about Christ, they encountered him through Francis's actions. The true power of Francis was not in eloquence, but in witness. He reminds us that the most transformative preaching happens not on pulpits or in grand speeches, but in the quiet choices of daily life. It's in how we treat others, how we forgive, and how we love without expecting anything in return. Francis's life was a testimony that authenticity speaks louder than words. In a world obsessed with appearances and achievement, Francis emptied himself so that Christ could be seen. Centuries later, the message of St. Francis still resonates. People are hungry, not for more words, but for authenticity. Francis's life offers a challenge. Can we live so simply, so humbly, so joyfully, that our very presence becomes a sermon? Can we let go of pride and embrace compassion? Can we choose to see Christ in everyone we meet, especially the forgotten and the broken? You don't need to renounce everything or wear a rough tunic to follow in Francis's footsteps. The invitation is much simpler, but no less profound. Choose humility over pride. Offer compassion instead of indifference. Embrace simplicity in place of excess. Every day presents opportunities to preach without words, through a patient smile, an act of forgiveness, a helping hand, or a silent prayer for someone in need. If Francis could turn a broken life into a radiant light for the world, so can you. The journey starts with small steps. A gentle word to someone hurting, an act of kindness for a stranger, a moment of gratitude for the beauty around you. These choices, repeated day after day, become the fabric of a life that preaches the gospel more eloquently than any sermon. Perhaps your life too can become a living testimony. In your family, among friends, at work, and in your community, you have the chance to reflect the love and peace that Francis embodied. You are invited to be a mirror of Christ, letting his light shine through your actions. So what about you? How will you let your life speak? The world is waiting, not for more words, but for lives transformed by love. Start today. Live in such a way that others don't just hear about Christ, but encounter him through you. Let your life become a sermon, preaching without words, touching hearts, and changing the world, one quiet act at a time. If this story inspired you, share it with someone searching for meaning. Remember, sometimes the loudest preaching comes from the quietest lives.